Ladies and gentlemen, may I request everyone to please kindly mute your microphone to allow smooth streaming on Zoom platform for the moderator and speakers for the webinar. You are most welcome to switch on your video. We have a photo session probably a little bit later. Please kindly mute yourself. We have a Q&A session at the end after both speakers have presented. So the Q&A session will be after both speakers presented. We have a group photo session later on, and please kindly be prepared as we have 2 polling questions ready for you for and after the session. For your kind information, the webinar is streamed live via Facebook and YouTube Live of the Malaysian Water Association pages. Okay, I think it's good to start, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Hayati, Council Member of the Malaysian Water Association, who will be emceeing the MWA webinar 2021 on financing solutions for water infrastructure projects in Malaysia. And with us today, we have our President of the Malaysian Water Association, Dr. Engineer Haji Muhammad Asari Daud. We have our moderator, Dr. Ching Tu, Deputy Secretary General, Ministry of Environment and Water, and our 2 esteemed speakers, Mr. Abdul Hadi, CEO of Pengurusan Aset Air Berhad, and Mr. Khairil Anwar, Senior Vice President, Business Banking Group 2, Bank Pembangunan Malaysia Berhad. I would like to extend our heartiest welcome to all online participants on Zoom platform and those also viewing via Facebook and YouTube live streaming from the Malaysian Water Association pages. Welcome to the webinar. As Malaysia faces a significant challenge in financing water infrastructure projects and reducing non-revenue water, which is the current economic landscape, the rising cost of materials depending on government's budget for water infrastructure. Therefore, the session today will provide you with some background of the establishment of PAAP and the current status of migration and transfer of assets, and then the snapshot of Bank Pembangunan Malaysia Berhad. How might we go about sustainable development financing scheme? So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us now invite President of the Malaysian Water Association, Dr. Engineer Haji Muhammad Asari Daud, to deliver his opening address. Please welcome Yang Berbahagia Dr.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nohayati. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon, everybody. Apa khabar semua? I hope everyone is fine during these tough days of pandemic, and that resulted in this sort of meetings. We have to meet over the internet, and we can't for the moment meet up face to face. However, as Malaysian Water Association is the association that is also the industry lead body in the country for the water and wastewater fraternity. So we are obliged and we are keen to bring industry players to several stakeholders. For example, today we have the bankers and also PAAP, which is also being on a banker. So for us to actually understand the industry better, for us, probably for the industry, probably this would be a good opportunity for us to meet up with our eminent speakers. And for the speakers, you will be seeing our members and who are actually the players of this industry. So I would like to take this opportunity to welcome, of course, the moderator, Dr. Ching Tu, who is also the Deputy Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment and Water, who will be moderating the session afterwards. Of course, Dr. Yati, thank you for being the MC today. And Mr. Amrul Hadi, who is actually the CEO of Pengurusan SAI Berhad. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation to speak up at our webinar. And also, last but not least, Mr. Khairil Anwar, which today I managed to have some pep talks him. So probably this is a very good start for this industry to get closer to the bankers. And of course, that is where we are actually lacking now. So Mr. Khairil is the Senior Vice President of the Bank Pembangunan Malaysia. I think this is a great opportunity for us to see some discussion together between the people who are actually having funds and people who are actually in need of fund here. So maybe this is one of the few events that we did with bankers. Usually we have been talking more to the technologists and of course the administrators. And today we are having bankers here to probably understand better about our industry, as well as we also want to understand about what are the opportunities that are available in the banking system that we can tap for the benefit of this industry. I think water fraternity is actually in deep need of funds. Just to probably set the scenario for our friend from Bank Pembangunan, actually aging assets is one of the big problems that we are facing. We might be having assets, and but our assets are actually aging. So this is a big problem, and I think we have no other way to redo this, to remedy this, other than look around for funds to get things done. We said that we need to move further, go ahead. We have to enter the so-called IR 4.0 industrial revolution. So we have to get funds available for this industry. I think the need for fund is going to be quite glaring, but how and when, that is going to be something that we ought to be discussing, and also we should be getting everybody understood about this. So I take this opportunity again to thank both speakers for coming and the moderator for being able to moderate the session. And I hope this session is going to be a meaningful one that we are going to benefit the most from here. So I hope that every one of you will enjoy this discussion. The participants, we have now 84 participants, another 20 or more will be coming. So thank you very much to the participants, are very supportive on Malaysian Water Association activities all this while. And I hope this webinar will be something that is going to be beneficial to all, especially those attending, and also for the industry at large. So I think that would be my brief introduction, and I think Malaysian Water Association is grateful to have all of you here. Everybody is important to us, and of course during this time I wish all of you all the best of health, and hopefully we are actually going to be maneuvering our way through this pandemic well and going to be stronger than before. Thank you very much. Dr. Yati, I'm back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the kind and inspiring opening address by President of the Malaysian Water Association, Dr. Engineer Haji Muhammad Asari bin Daud. And we couldn't agree more on water fraternity needing funds. And we are so grateful and blessed today for having our two esteemed speakers to be sharing their insights and overview on how might we best finance solutions for the water sector. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start with our first polling sets of questions. And in this regards, my colleague from MWA, Joe, will kindly assist me with the polling questions. And I would like to encourage everyone attending on Zoom to please kindly participate. Joe?
Yes, Maulana.
Yes. Meanwhile, may I welcome everyone watching this webinar from Facebook Live and YouTube Live of the Malaysian Water Association. And today we are going to have a wonderful discussion, I believe, on water infrastructure financing examples. Probably there'll be some stakeholder repayment methods, and we have also allowed more than enough time as buffer to receive your esteemed Q&A at the end of the session. So while waiting for the poll questions, be prepared and embrace yourself. You can also grab your coffee, your water by your side to just keep you hydrated throughout the 3 to 4 hour session today. I would like to welcome all participants over Zoom here, and I can see familiar names attending today. Thank you so much for the support from members of water utilities, stakeholders, members of the MWA, financiers as well, and I can see some students also joining in the session today. So I hope it's not going to be long before we can bring up the poll questions for the participants.
Quite some error here, not sure, but I try to check it out. Hold on.
All right. At the end of the session, I will share with you a couple more events that the Malaysian Water Association will be organizing. So obviously, MWA has been actively organizing.
Saya punya jadi.
Joe, you are not mute.
Oh.
Okay, so I'll be sharing with you some of the programs that MWA will be organizing after this webinar. Ada banyak webinar types since we are all talking online and meeting online and doing activities virtually. Okay, so perhaps if the poll is taking some time, Joe, shall we proceed with the first speaker first? Yep. Okay. I think we shall proceed with the first speaker and we can do the poll later. It's very independent of the session. Oh, it's coming up now. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, those attending on Zoom, would you be so kind to please kindly participate and cast your vote on the questions that we have now on your screen. There are 9 simple questions just to set the scene as to how might we overcome these challenges for financing the sector. Maybe about 2 minutes. I hope participants on Zoom can see the questions clearly.
Scroll down, okay, scroll down.
Yep, you can scroll down and then you can cast your vote, yes, no, or neutral to the 9 questions given. I'm keeping time, 2 minutes. And once you've voted yes, no, or neutral to the 9 questions, and then we can, you can just click submit.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
So
Joe, how many participants have responded? We have 91 on my screen. I can see 91 participants here.
40, about 40.
40, okay, going to 50. It's very simple questions for us together to set the scene, just to get the discussion going. Probably we have less understanding about financing water solutions for the sector, or any thoughts that you put in, yes, no, neutral, would be accommodative to the sessions later. Okay, Joe, how many now responded?
half, and still half.
Still halfway, okay. Yeah, come on, ladies and gentlemen. Press your yes, no, or neutral for the questionnaire. We shall wait. There's 1 minute left. Maybe we can stop at around 60, 70, Mr. Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah? How much now? Yep.
Now it's already ada 60 lah, 60 plus lah.
60
Depending
plus?
on question lah, yeah.
Yalah.
Okay, 60 plus. Okay.
Good, Mr. Good.
Yep. Shall we share the polling results, Joe? Up to now?
Sorry, I cannot share the.
Sorry, let me try, yeah?
Okay, Mira, tolong.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Amira.
This is the one, eh?
Okay, so here we are. The poll result is being shared. On weak project structuring, neutral 46%. On high deficits and insufficient revenue by operator, yes, up to 87%. Cost recovery constraint 90%. High credit risk for private financing 67%. Unreliable planning and procurement processes, neutral 49%. Financial sector obstacles, yes, 60% said yes. Dearth of funds in domestic markets, neutral 48%. Lack of creditworthiness among operators, yes, 52% say yes. And high financing and transaction costs, yes to that. Okay, thank you very much, Joe and Amira, for helping me out with the poll questions. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me introduce our moderator for this afternoon, none other than Dr. Ching Tu Kim, Deputy Secretary General, Ministry of Environment and Water. So Dr. Ching tak asing lagi dalam bidang sektor air. I think everybody knows him here. He obtained a Bachelor of Mass Communication, UKM, and a Master of Science in Information Technology from UPM, and later obtained his PhD from Wageningen University in Water Sector Reformation. He was then the Assistant Secretary of the Biofuel Division, Ministry of Primary Industries and Commodities, and later Under Secretary Water and Sewerage Services Division, Ministry of Energy, Green Technology and Water. He has written the book Malaysian Water Sector Reform, Policy and Performance, and is now the Deputy Secretary General of Ministry of Environment and Water. Without further ado, Dr. Ching Tu, the Zoom platform is yours.
Okay, thank you Dr. Nohayati, yang berusaha Dr. Engineer Haji Muhammad Asari Daud, President of the Malaysian Water Associations. Afternoon, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. First of all, let me welcome all participants to today's webinar on financing solution for the water infra projects organized by the MWA. Right? And thank you for giving me the opportunity to moderate the session this afternoon at MWA. As the saying goes, water is life, sanitation is dignity. But achieving this objective requires huge investment. And we know almost 100% of the investments as of today is coming from the government in the form of loan or grant. The national water sector has been confronted by many challenges, which includes, you and I know, unsustainable tariff structure, high NRW, pollution issues, lack appreciation to water that leads to wasteful consumption among us, and the unwillingness to pay the bill in respect to the sewerage sector. Right? On the other hand, our dependence on public funding to some extent has resulted in underinvestment in water infrastructure. Right? The allocations under the mission plan are not only insufficient to meet the investment required, but are also highly contested among other economic sectors, such as irrigation, agriculture, and plantation. Right? The bankability issue of the water sector, which largely associated with the absence of sensible tariff regime, has been counterproductive. Right? thus making the water sector less attractive to the private financing. Right? And this issue on financing solutions of important infra that we'll be discussing right after this. Right? And I'm happy to inform that we have two speakers today, Cik Hadi from PAB and Cik Khairul from Bank Pembangunan, to share how their respective organizations contribute to achieve the national water agenda, such as the SDG goals and also the water sector transformation 2040. Before that, right, allow me to just to share, take 5 to 10 minutes of your time to putting into perspective what CASA is focusing on the water sector. Allow me to share the slides. Okay, if we are looking from the macro perspective to achieve the SDG goal, especially goal number 6.1 and 6.2, the World Bank estimate that we need about close to 28.4 billion ringgit a year just to provide a basic water and sanitation services to the underserved population. Only a basic water and sanitation services, right? But if we were to achieve fully the target 6.1 and 6.2, 114 billion a year is needed. But this only infrastructure cost, right? It does not include OPEX and the maintenance cost of the infrastructure. 114 billion a year, right? And if you look at the country, including Malaysia, to achieve this goal, there is a shortfall of 2.5 trillion ringgit USD to achieve the SDG goal number 6. And this shortfall can be bridged by the private financings, what we call it the blending financings from private sector. This is what we want to see. Active private investment to meet the SDG goals. Right? Just to give you a bit of the trend of the investment made under the Malaysia plan from 10 to the 12th Malaysia plan on 3 sectors: flood mitigation, water supply, sewerage, and others. As you can see from the slides, right, the investment figure are increasing every 5 years. Just to look at the 12th Malaysia plan, these are the amount requested to EPU. We still waiting for the amount approved by EPU, which is going to be much lower than amount requested. From the previous record, we are going to get between 30 to 40% of what required under the 12th Malaysia plan. So 16.3 billion for flood mitigation under JPS, 15.4 billion water supply, mainly for water source under BBA, close to 6 billion under JPP for civil projects, and other about 0.1 billion for others under NAHRIM and the rest. Right? And under the water sector 2040, we are estimated that we need more than 360 billion investment to achieve the 20 years goal from the 12 Malaysia plan, 13 Malaysia plan, 14 and 15 Malaysia plan over the span of 20 years, right? And the focus area would be on 1, we want to make sure that we have enough water source, including projects under JPS to mitigate the climate change, right? Secondly, we want to make sure that you and I will be guaranteed of water supply. This mainly to address issue related to NRW, to build more water treatment plant, and to ensure that we use less water. On the demand management, the big thing is that it's the tariff setting mechanism, right? You know, on that is important thing. And secondly, it's also important is to make sure that this is another span is to make sure that we install water saving devices in every household. That will be the main focus of CASA over 20 years, sorry. And just to give you a flavor for the 12 Malaysia plan, right? 16 billion of water resources, 15 billion water supply. Water supply, this is more on water source. The Rasau ORS, more than 2 billion. We have also project water transfer between Penang and Perak State, again another 2 billion ringgit, right? And we have also projects under PAAP, which is Langat 2 Phase 2, again another close to 4 billion investment. That kind of, and we want to bring in more private investment to fund these projects. Sewerage, 5.9 billion. Why is look very small? Over the years, we have completed many of big projects under JPP. The Langat CSTP is due to complete very soon, 1.6 billion ringgit. 2 billion projects, 2 billion worth of projects in Papan, Perak is also due to complete very soon. And we see that there could be less investment on serious infra in the future. On the this is a bit on the task force under CASA that look into water financings, right? And this task force is looking into innovative water financing to complement public investment. And we see that from the 360 billion that we need, perhaps under 12 plan, the ratio will be 90-40. And we are looking also creating environment to attract more private financings, right? This has to do with looking into against several clauses in the Act 655 that we could, for example, we could extend a longer licensing period to attract more private financing into the sector. And the outcome is to make sure that we have a sector that is sustainable and profitable as a key economic sector to the GDP. And over time, we want to see that from 12 to 15 million plan, there's a reduced public fundings and increase in private investment into the water sector. And this is just what the task force is envisaged, right? From 12 plan right to 15 plan. And the maximum that we could foresee is that would be 40% private investment comes 15 Malaysian plan. This is overall to the what we have on the plate now from the CASA. And on that note, may I now invite the first speaker, Cik Hadi Ali, which is the CEO of PAAP. I think Cik Ali need no further introduction, I would say, right? He's our CEO of PAAP. As we know, PAAP was established to support the water sector migration that we started way back in 2006. And PAAP operates on the principle of water asset-like model to finance water infrastructure under the migration scheme, right? And today, Cik Hadi will share with us the role of PAAP in greater detail, so the challenges and what will be the way forward PAAP to complement the water sector migrations. And without further ado, Cik Hadi, the floor is yours. Cik Hadi, you are muted.
Okay. Now. Thank you very much, Dr. Ching, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everybody, and hopefully everybody well, and please sit back and relax. And thank you, MWA, for giving me this opportunity to talk on behalf of PAB and also as an agency to CASA. And Tuan Haji Asari, the president of MWA, Dr. Nahayati, Academy Science, Dr. Ching, yourself also, TKSP of CASA, and everybody on the Zoom. Thank you very much for being here. My presentation today to cover two main areas. Basically, I want to update about what's happening in PAAB, and the second part will be more on the water financing in general and challenges that we foresee. So, as what Dr. Ching mentioned just now, PAAB's role or mandate was to do the water services industry restructuring by taking over all the water loans at the state and and also develop the water infrastructure, upgrading, and then the lease back to the water operator and make the water operator operate as a asset light. We are 100% owned by MOF. We've been established on the same year SPAN was established. That was right after the establishment of WASIA. So PAAP and SPAN like siblings, we can say. Okay, I would like to go straight to the slides. Okay. So when we say the water services has been put as a concurrent list, that means the water, which used to be 100% under the state purview, now becomes a shared list. Meaning to say federal government has the role there, as well as the state government. So state government remain the body, the state government still responsible to look after the water resources, upkeeping all the water catchments, taking care of the rivers, the basins, and the federal governments here, the role is to provide grants to build the infrastructure. And the water resources is to be managed by the BKSA, that is Badan Kawasali Air Negeri. Ministry, CASA, is a policy makers in its source grants for the water for the states, and in some cases also provide some loans to the states to do some water services projects. SPAN here is a regulator, is a licensing body for water and sewerage. And PAP here is a developer for water infrastructure. State water operators now is an asset-light entity and focus on efficient operation and delivery to the water, to the consumer. So up to now, we have all the states except Terengganu, except Terengganu. When we started in 2006, 2008, we have Syarikat Air Melaka, Science, SAJ. Those are the early migrators. Then we have Syarikat Air Perlis, and followed by Penang. And soon after that, LAP, Lembaga Air Perak. The Selangor restructuring was the longest because it took a very long time to fulfill the restructuring terms. In fact, we started signing in 2014 with the agreement, what do you call it, the agreements, and then we finalized the migration agreements and other related agreements in 2019. So it's a major exercise for Selangor, but it's worth it. Then we have Kelantan, AKSB, and just quiet after Kelantan. Then we have Pahang and Kedah, in between, about 3 months apart. Then now we are trying to pujuk satu, and also according to Dr. Chin, Jabatan Bekalan Air Labuan soon. The whole thing about water services industry restructuring is to achieve this goal, that is to achieve full cost recovery, and this is a very long journey. In fact, we are putting this in 4 stages. The first stage is to get all the state migrated and turn them into something that we call asset-light operator. And of course, at that time, financial sustainability is a common feature of the water operator, not viable at all. And hence, with the migration, took over the debts at the state level, the federal debts, and also the assets, which they built using that money. And also we start leasing back to them. And during that time, we are also building new infrastructures. Of course, the payment for the old assets, with some state, we give them moratorium, deferment for 5 years so that they don't have to pay any lease rental yet for the first 5 years for the old assets. So now we are in 2021, we are still have 1 more or 2 more states to migrate. But at the same time, those the early states migrated under us, they are experiencing all these features. The CapEx implementation is intensified. We go ahead and increase the reserve margin and assist water operators to achieve some of the SPAN regulatory KPI. And with respect to lease rate, what we offer is a very affordable lease rate. And this will going on until we feel that in 2000, we predict in 2000, after 2031, with all this infrastructure completed in the states, and the states are running more on commercial basis, perhaps at that time, the request or the intention to increase or revise the tariff will face lesser resistance because the quality is super good at that time. And some of the companies, water operators, are having some profits to start implementing CapEx using their own funds. And hopefully in the year 2040 and above, we will operate commercially and full cost recovery entity. And by that, we mean that the water projects or the CapEx implemented by this water operator are bankable. And they even can guarantee, put a guarantee to that. So the bank has no reservation to grant credits. Okay, snapshot on park progress and project. So we have, in fact, since inception, SPAN has approved the CapEx for the state water operators above 10 billion. And what part has implemented has approved also around 10 million. Because currently the ones that under the business plan is only 6 billion plus. Langat 2 and Labu was implemented not on the business plan basis, but this is federal projects. So we have approved about 10.6 billion up to June. And you can see all the details on the number of packages and the projects currently under construction, and also those are completed. In terms of value of completed project versus amount that we awarded for all states, this is the percentage. I think in Malacca we have the highest completed project versus the awarded, and they are still under process for future development. This is just the completed projects. And you can see Labu is completed, Negeri Sembilan, Johor. So you can see very smooth project implementation. I know there are some issues. There are sometimes you face some delays also. But overall, these are the values of the project completed versus the amount that we awarded. And just to remind you that sometimes the project is approved, but it is up to the water operator to apply the allocation, to apply parts funding. Some states, they have a facility license, that means they can source their own funding. That's why, or sometimes because of the state are supportive, Penang in this case, use mostly the state soft loans, which is, I would say, cheaper than what Park is offering. Okay, next stage. These are the sort of report cards, or what you can say also the return from our investment. This is what we have delivered. These are the project completed. And by completed, we means that the projects or packages been issued CPC. So up to now, we have added 1,726 treatment capacity. This is new capacity under PAB. Additional about close to 500 MLD, soon to be completed within 3 to 4 years. A storage, this is treated water storage. It's about 570. There are some still under progress. 570 million liters of new storage capacity. And we are talking about new pipes, old pipe replacement and new pipe combined, about 2,000 kilometers, and in the progress, another 1,300 plus kilometer of pipes. You'll be wondering how we manage all these projects and what sort of financing facilities that we have. Currently, we have two IMTN program. IMTN is Islamic Medium-Term Notes program. One is guaranteed by federal government. The other one is on standalone, AAA rated. Both at 20 billion. And we have, this is 30 years financing program. And you can see the utilization of the guarantees and as well as a AAA, more or less balanced. We'll use more of the AAA rated programs simply because the guarantee is well needed for some other project as well. On the right side, you can see these are the utilization of Sukuk. These are mainly migration costs. Okay, the migration costs. The capex, actually the total capex that we have spent about 6 billion. Yeah? So these are the amount that we put under Sukuk. The rest are internally financed from the profits, from the income, from other investment. But as you can see, Johor and Selangor make the largest utilization. These are mainly for the pre-migration costs. Okay, that's about all on the progress with PAAB, and I want to start something on the water financing in general. So I found this on the write-ups. I think I can't remember whose write-up was this from, but it's very, very true. And you can see the water services objective is to match the demand supply. That's right. And the quality, talking about the quality and the location. And the last part is about tariff. The amount, the rate that you can afford and willing to pay. And these are the two conditions that must exist on the tariff. Okay, affordability and willingness. So in fact, we are using the same approach when it comes to lease rental. Affordability is the underlying principle for the early stage of the migration. And also talking about the challenges in water sector, it's not economics, but politics. We are not talking about the shortage, but it's more of governance, how we manage our resources. Okay. We have very short history of water financing. Earlier, it was 100% by the government, provided by the government, either through budget and also some are through the multilateral development banks, such as World Bank, ADB, IFCs, because at that time, the earlier stage, we are qualified for World Bank loans for water services. And as we progress and we have more of private participation, where the government is promoting privatization drive in 90s, so that water can be managed by the private sectors, and we have some concessions arrangement for certain state, such as Selangor, such as Johor. We have Puncak Niaga, Rand State Water, that works. But then come financial crisis in late 90s, the government finance become very tight, and the water operator, the concessionaires also affected, and all the terms of tariff revision in the concession terms were not met, and we saw some water bonds issued by the concessionaires have been downgraded, and some even defaulted. And if you can recall, PUB also involved in the buyback of these bonds in 2010. So water investment by private sector was proven to be expensive, and financial position on the part of water operator to implement capex on their own are not feasible. So I think starting from late 90s, the government are thinking about how to restructure the water sector already. So it took a very long process. And in 2006, we managed to amend the constitution, introduce WASIA, we established PUB, and we have spun in 2006. Back to the question of economics and finance. We cannot deny that we need to invest more. I mean, the terms called, when we say lack of investment, underinvested. Even at the current stage, we see more and more projects required, you know. And also we are dealing with this possibility of revision on tariff due to political sensitivity. This has happened everywhere, not just in Malaysia. Everywhere, when we attended water seminars, we can hear this is the same thing wherever, and you know, we have to live with it. And even in PUB also, we have to condition ourselves and to rework our financial model with this assumption that tariff is not the solution for our cash flow. We have to introduce more cost savings. We have to innovate, try to use financing facilities that give us cheaper. We have to manage our asset and liability more rigorously. And Dr. Ching also talking about inadequate finance public funds for water sector. And this is part of the process whereby the government is slowly allowing private sector to come and fund the water projects. And lack of investors can be addressed. Lack of investors' involvement can be addressed by relooking at the risk-reward structure. I mean, how to make the project more viable and also more bankable. And in future, perhaps this is what we need to address as well, that water project can be monetized, securitized, I mean, the cash flow. I mean, this is common in other sectors. You know, monetizing the future cash flow. This is something that the banks are very familiar with. And of course, the economic gap filled by subsidy is not sustainable. So these are the type of investment in water sector. Of course, I start with climate change because this is very relevant. Today, climate change is not about global warming, glacier, or iceberg melting cause the water level to increase. We are talking about very, very unpredictable weather. On top of that, of course, we have the issue of coastal erosion and flood mitigation, drought. And this requires very, very huge investment, and I can say not much revenue attached to it, but it gives safety. It gives a more important reason to address climate change issues through infrastructure. Water source. These are the water source under the state's finance by the grants of federal grants. Yeah, these are the works that been done. Measure on water storage, catchment dams, and also we include the agricultural irrigation. And water services, if you look at the table just now, earlier from Dr. Ching, it will be covered by PAP mostly. So these are the areas that we are focusing, WTPs, upgrading a new one, building a new one. Reservoir here is the treated water, drinkable water reservoir, pipelines. We are moving into, later on, looking into sludge treatment. Currently we are building sludge treatment facilities for water operators to comply with the DOE. NRW, we are formulating new schemes to assist water operators to do some of the NRW works. And perhaps, we don't know, in future, we also have to cover some of the areas like sewerage, wastewater, water reclamation projects. Those are under water services, under WASIA, which currently been funded by JPPs and Indah Water. So again, do we need alternative financing? And the answer is definitely we have to, because Dr. Ching says that the government will allocate less and less to the industry and more participation from the private sector. And we see that water financing is everybody's responsibility. No doubt that there are agencies like PAP or banks to finance it, or even the state government to finance certain areas. But really, water financing in some countries are everybody's responsibility. Some have community financing for the water projects in the country. And you can see the PAP's project over the last 12 years, there is so much that we can deliver. So we need more people to join and to speed up the development. And I know some of the projects, not all the water projects are low return, and some can give a stable return, but for long term. At the end of the day, we have to question what is the return or decent return for a company, for a business. It shouldn't be a return based on monetary reward. You have to include all the SRI factors in terms of social, environmental return. So I'm sure there are more parties who are interested to come and join for this sort of return. And since most of the projects are quite social related, social impact, security, and very low return. So that's why we need a very, very low funding cost mechanism. To the point, if we have to have a wakaf can be quite cheap. Or even banking, a low-cost banking, maybe highly subsidized by the federal government. And all this will have impact on the tariff structure. We have lesser pressure to revise tariff all the time. Otherwise, all projects must be tied up to the revenue, and the revenue from water is related to tariff. So you don't have to go on the tariff all the time. In other countries, water financing been funded via revolving funds, such as in US, in Philippines, and also the states under municipality, even in Europe also under municipality. Some of the Europe, UK for example, water financing is under the operators on full cost recovery method. So before the projects can be executed, the tariffs agreed upfront. And for Malaysia, we have many agencies actually. We have FELDA, we have PAB, we have FELDA, we have even CASA, we have Kementerian Luar Bandar. So they are quite fragmented. And for Netherlands, they have a water bank Netherlands, and it's been around for a long time. And this is something that probably we can look at. In some lesser developed countries, such as in Africa, some are using microfinance to do this. And there are some models introduced by the United Nations based on the revolving funds, whereby all the entrepreneur can make use of these funds. Once they manage to reach the revenue collection stage, they will pay back so that these funds can be shared with other parties. And lastly, we are looking at the self-finance, donation, wakaf, crowdfunding for financing. Okay, talking about the financial institution and the borrowers, these are the standard features that we have. When we go to the bank will ask cost recovery. And we talk about the water operator, the cost recovery is from tariff, cost recovery from there's no other sources for cost recovery for water operator. I mean the fact is that some of the products are underpriced. We're also looking at how to lower the cost of borrowing by blending the grants and the debts. And also the projects, the borrowing has its own cash flow to pay for the loans. It doesn't matter because the loans, the projects tend to have very, very low income on the initial stage. But it can be structured in such a way that a bigger amount of payment by the borrower once the revenue stream is stronger. This is all the financial restructuring, structured finance, which I think banks are very, very familiar with. It's just that the terms of the structure need to be agreed by both. And if we talk about private funding, of course, the bank will require long list of covenants, what you can do and what you cannot do. If you do, then you become default. And once you are defaulted, then this will happen to you. So that will make the private financing, especially with financing sector, are less desirable compared to the government-backed financing, such as PAB. And also in PAB, we are not requiring any security. It is secured only by the agreements, migration agreements. As secured, some we have a ring fencing, and there's a minimal control that we have, ring financing, so that your collection cannot be withdrawn until it reaches a certain amount that you are supposed to pay to PAB, for example. And that's about all. I think that's is a fair thing to do, but we have very, very little covenants on loan, on our financing, on even the debt provision, default provision also very, very mild. And in the case of water sector, this is the part that I think is a bit difficult, because we are building the capacity, and this capacity basically serve for future demands. So there are some new assets we built, will not produce any revenue yet, but it serves its purpose. It serves as a reserve margin, and reserve margin being used maybe for investment purposes. And certain parties want to do investment, they have to see that the water provision in the state is adequate. That's how they look at the reserve margin, for example. And in other concessions, they have capacity charge for this. So in water, we don't have capacity charge, except with when you deal with the concession. So capacity in this case is totally borne by the water operators. So this is the area where I think the state maybe can lend some support to water operators to pay this part, or maybe capacity to be paid by certain parties. Again, capacity maybe is part of the tariff structure. Somebody has to pay for the capacity. So talking about feature of the financing. So this is, it's going to be like this. Viability, financial viability, bankability is a standard term, but on top of that, we need to consider the social impact, the environmental, the sustainability issues, and spending by the governments must be coordinated with other ministries, because earlier, like I mentioned, we have more than one ministries spending for the water services. They are spending on irrigation, on agricultural, some for Felda, for example. They have specific area that they are doing, but eventually they have to deliver this to the water operator also. And we seek more moratorium, some sort of subsidy at the early stage of the development, because water is a high capex. We commit high amount of investment upfront, and the return will be very slow. So this is where we need to cushion the impact on the cash flow at the early stage. And private and public partnership is the way to go, and to have to explore the comparative advantage of each other. The private sector can be very strong in technical and innovation. Public may be stronger or have comparative advantage on the funding. Government funding is cheap. This is where we blend both. In fact, if you look at the innovation of financial products in finance, products such as swap really builds upon the comparative advantage. One party has advantage on certain currency, for example. The other party has different certain advantage. So they do the swap arrangement, build upon the concept of comparative advantage. And lastly, we need to have a multifunctional finance institution. As you can see, wide areas of investment under the water sector. So you don't have to go to many banks to get financing for different type of projects. So do we have a choice? Can we do it, without private sectors, and to go back to the old model whereby the government finance everything? The answer is likely, and that is not possible. We have to live and work together very closely with the private sectors. And in fact, we are talking about developing the water sectors as water sectors itself as a economic sector. And we may want to listen more and more the demands, or we have to listen more from the private sector. What are their needs? What are their needs? I mean, we have to understand better about the business, and probably promote more business-friendly policies to assist the private sector, to allow them, to encourage them to involve more in this sector. And the private sector, in the long run, will turn the water sector as a totally economic, commercially driven sector. And perhaps by that time, we have water as a commodity. And this is the future direction of the water sector itself. And this is some suggestions on how to attract private sector's involvement. And again, we mentioned about risk return. Some of the project, maybe we have to cut the project and assigning some of the less and risky project, less return on more risky project to the private sector, and private sector to have more viable part of the projects. And this is something that we can explore, which is revenue sharing. when we talk about the water sector, water projects that have very low return in the early stage, perhaps the early stage, the borrower will have to pay a very small amount. I mean, we are not asking for moratorium or grace period, but just a low payment, and to be accelerated towards the end if the project produce more income. And wakaf-based development also must be explored to include the corporate wakaf. Currently, we have cash wakaf. And as I can see, between the private and public sector, these are the type of project that is more suitable to remain as a public, such as the funding, the vehicle. I mean, we need, I consider it as a public sector, and the water resources, irrigation, storage, like dam, will remain with public. Another areas such as a river basin, climate change will remain under public, but private sector equally will have very big room to explore. These are something that I think will make the water sector transformation faster. So we have sludge-based manufacturers. We can even have water grid owners, pipelines owners. The O&M contractors is common, NWA contractors. This is going to be very big as well. I think Dr. Chin can confirm on this. The budget for NWA is going to be very large. And as it is also, we are at Power committed ourselves for the pipe replacements, which is considered core activities in NWA works. And to the private sector, again, with PUB, we have a very fast approval. I mean, PUB, we only look at the projects approved by the SPAN. And of course, if you have to go to banks, the faster approvals can be achieved if the lender can understand better about your risk, and the cash flow profile is bankable, the project is viable, and also more discussion with the two parties to make it more bankable. I mean, viability is talking about the project can have a revenue to pay back the loan. Bankability is something that you can work on with the bank. I mean, what are the added securities needed to make it easier for bank to approve the credits? And of course, blended rate, competitive, stable return is there for private sector to explore. And water sector is a very stable sector. And if we have very good agreement, it will provide a stable long-term return. This is some of the investors like insurance company. They really look for long-term, stable investment return instead of high but volatile. Okay, in terms of policy, talking about moral suasion to encourage more and more water sector or banking sector to give loans to the sector. And with more discussion, coordination, some of the projects can be consolidated, can be executed effectively. And we welcome if there is any market-oriented regulatory framework. And also promoting this investment in SRI by long-term players such as EPF, for insurers, and improving the bankability by having an institution run by the experts, water experts, so that the risk can be understood better and loans can be expedited. And lastly, we're talking about charities, philanthropy activities. Take, for example, Amanah Raya, Tabung Haji, can use this concept to promote philanthropy, donations for the purposes of water sector. Okay, that is my last slides. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Encik Hadi, for the presentation. Right. I saw in the chat box we have received several questions already, but I suggest that we keep the question to the end of the presentation so that we can just focus on the presentation. Even though I have 2 or 3 questions Hadi for you, but I will keep it to myself first.
Okay.
Now maybe I would invite.
I'm stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now I would like to invite our second speaker. This is Encik Encik Khairil Anwar. He is currently the Senior Vice President Business Banking Group 2 of the Bank Pembangunan, right? He has over 30 years experience in the banking industry and currently serving his 8 years in the Bank Pembangunan, right? He is currently spearheading one of the business banking department in the bank, and Khairil holds a Bachelor of Law from UTM. Without further ado, Khairil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you to MWA for giving us this opportunity to introduce who is PPMB and what we do. And I think in terms of financing, it's already been covered by Hadi a long way. And I think everybody is getting the perspective on what is the industry look like. Even we at BPMB also understand a few on the structure of what PAB is doing and who own the asset, and then who are the one actually who are operating the facilities. Okay, Firdaus, please let me just share. I'm not going to take a long time. It is actually just to share our experience and what we have done, and maybe some suggestion for everybody to look at and to take on how to move forward in financing of water asset. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you about this is the agenda for today. The first thing I'm going to do is actually I'm going to give a snapshot of BPMB. And second one is actually I'm going to touch a little bit on Sustainable Development Financing Scheme. This is actually the scheme introduced by the government to support the Sustainable Development Agenda. And the third one is actually we are going to move into Industry Digitalization Transformation Scheme. This is another scheme introduced by the government to support the transformation of industry in terms of digitalization and automation. And I'm going to share also what we have done with regards to water infrastructure project financing. This is actually a live example. And here you can see what is the project all about and where is the revenue coming from. And towards the end, we're going to share about what is the probable stakeholder repayment methods that can be done. Okay, next slide please, Amir. Okay, some snapshot of BPMB. We are actually 100% owned by Ministry of Finance Incorporated, and we are being governed by Bank Negara Malaysia as well as Ministry of Economic Affairs. Currently, our total assets stood at about 23.4 billion, and we are recording a net profit of about 100 million with a risk-weighted capital ratio of 42.8, and we are also rating AAA by RAM and AAA by MARC. We are established actually in 1973, and on the next slide, I'm going to show you and what we have done from 1973 to today. As you can see from the slide there, from Penang to Sabah, we have been participating in the development of the nation, particularly on the infrastructure side. Okay, and in terms of private financing initiative, we have done a lot, quite a bit, particularly, especially in the development of new campus for university, the development of hospital, and of course, under concession, we are doing a lot of highways, And I think we are doing also some water project in Selangor and in Johor. So this is a little bit about BPMB, and I'm going to go straight into what we have in our what we have now is actually introduced. Sustainable Development Financing Scheme is actually introduced by the government and effective from 1st January 2021 and will end until 31st December 2023. The government introduced about 2.0 billion fund, and the facility that we can offer under the fund is actually term financing, or we can do it a syndication or club deal financing. As you can see there, the capex for capex investment, our financing repayment will be very long, which is up to 15 years. And for OPEX, we can go up to 5 years. I would like to remind all of you that for this OPEX, it's not a standalone OPEX. It is have to be linked to the CAPEX investment. So meaning to say that if you are investing into a particular project, and to start with, or to start the project, you need some OPEX. So this is what we mean by this particular OPEX. And our margin of financing is about 80%. And our pricing is based on our cost of fund or base lending rate plus margin. And you can see there is a subsidy 2% being given by the government. So this is what the difference between this sustainable development financing and our general fund. Okay, of course, we need to look at the project, and we need to do credit valuation and the bankability of the particular project. Okay, so the eligible applicant will be, it can be a partnership, it can also be a private limited company or public company or cooperative. As far as this company is actually registered in Malaysia and involved in the initiative, in the Sustainable Development Goal Initiative, and it have to be 51% owned by Malaysian. Okay. And then of course, they must be able to show and demonstrate on the measurable and continuous contribution to one of the 17 SDG. So I think Cik Hadi just now mentioned about there is a requirement for a cheaper funding for water project because of, at the end of the day, the repayment for this particular project will come from the increase in tariff. So that is why the government introduced this, and to achieve actually Sustainable Development Goal number 6. Next slide, Next slide, please. Okay, so that is Sustainable Development Goal. And then the second scheme that we have is actually on the Industry Digitalization Transformation Scheme. This is also introduced by the government in January 2021 and will end up to December 2023. More or less, the structure of the facility are almost the same, with 80% financing, can go up to 15 years, and with a subsidy of 2%. The only difference between this the Sustainable Development Scheme and Industry Digitalization Transformation Scheme is actually for this IDTS, the eligibility for the applicant is only 40% owned by Malaysian. So under SDG is actually about 41%, and for this one is about 40%. The reason why the difference between 40 and 51% is actually under this industry digital transformation, we may need to have people from outside Malaysia with the capacity and knowledge on digitalization to participate in taking our economy forward. Okay, so I also understand from Dr. Ching, from MWA, that they need a lot of fund to do on this digitalization of the industry. So I think this fund is actually what you need for. Okay, I'm going to give you some example. So that's about the fund that we have, and I'm going to give you about the example of project that we have financed before. Basically, there are about 3 projects that we have financed. The first one is we are financing a capex for water distribution and supply service, and also managing the non-revenue water. And this one is actually the source of payment is through a water concession agreement. And of course, this is actually a very long term loan, and for this one, it's already been fully paid off lah. The second one is actually a financing or a construction of a water treatment plant. This is with regards to a supply of water to foreign entity, and the repayment source for the loan is actually an assignment of proceed from the sales of water to the foreign entity. The last one is actually about the sewage treatment plant in Kuala Lumpur, and this is very unique, and this is actually the way we look at it, this is the latest arrangement by the government, where the cost or the investment of the promoter is being paid through a land swap arrangement. Meaning to say that when you do a project for, in this case, is actually under sewerage, what you need to do is you develop in accordance to whatever that the government requirement, and in return, as a repayment to it, the government will give you another land or another land as payment. So we, as you can see from these 3, there are actually 3 ways of looking at on how to finance investment on capital investment on water industry. Yeah. Okay. Let me share you on what the notable project that we have financed. Sharing with you on the privatization of water distribution and supply in Selangor and KL. So I think it's already history, because it's, the asset that we finance has already been taken over by PAAP, and just maybe a knowledge on how do they structure it. Is actually it is under a 30-year concession agreement between the state of Selangor and Puncak Niaga and Syabas lah. So the repayment of the investment by Syabas is actually through a collection. Okay, so we financed it up to 1.86 billion actually. So I forgot to share with you that at BPMB, the minimum that we can do financing is about 30 million, and the limit for a government project is about 1.8 billion. That is our single customer limit lah. Okay, and then this is what we are proposing, and that what we are thinking of on how the stakeholder can make their repayment. So we call it a stakeholder repayment methods. Basically, there are few methods that can be done. The first one is actually through concession, and I think for concession. I think Cik Hadi mentioned about the fail of privatization of water in Selangor. So that is actually under concession. So, but the way we look at it, and under PFI, private funding initiative, concession is actually the only way to go. As I give you an example just now, for the development of universities and hospital, the government is actually taking PFI route with a concession agreement of 21 years. So that helped, and I think because of that, there's a lot of universities and there's a lot of hospitals that being done under that initiative. The second, under this concession agreement, actually, what need to be done is actually the government need to give a concession to a company for maybe a period of 21 years, 20 to 21 years. And what we're going to do is we will finance the development of the infrastructure for that particular project, and the repayment will be from the rental, the lease being paid by the government to the concession companies. So this is actually under concession agreement. And another method suggested is actually on a deferred payment basis. where what we do is actually the federal or state government, if let's say they are in their needs of to develop a water infrastructure, what we are suggesting is actually for the government to make that payment to the contractor over a period of maybe 10 years. So instead of one chunk budget that the federal government or the state government need to do, they can break it up into 10 years. So what will happen is we are going to finance the development now, and the government will get the asset or the infrastructure now, but the government will need to make a payment over a period of maybe 10 years. So this will help actually to expedite the development of infrastructure now, rather than waiting for the next 10 years for the government to have enough money to do the same infrastructure project. So there's a lot of benefit to it, but of course we still need or we are still depending on public fund, which is from the government. Okay, and we would like to also suggest to on other mode of financing, because as you know, I think most of you is actually an investor or entrepreneur. When you do an investment, definitely you need to have a return. And of course, as for now, the return can only be from the water operators, which is normally state government. So other methods that we are suggesting is actually on revenue, extra revenue sharing. In this case, if let's say, for example, a state with a 40% non-revenue water, currently recorded 40% non-revenue water, what we can do is actually we will help, or the contractor will help, the company will help the state in managing the non-revenue water. So with that, there will be an income to be generated from the sales of this water. So the contractor can enter into agreement with the state to have the loan repaid through the savings, through the saving that the state benefit from the management of the non-revenue water. And the second thing that we are suggesting is actually a treated water supply contract. We have seen this. We have seen a few companies doing this. What they did was is actually they invest in the water treatment facility, and the repayment for their investment is through a payment from the water operator from a purchase of the treated water. So this is also another way of doing it. And the third one is actually on the pre-funding of government matching grant. We understand from our conversation with Dr. Ching and the industry player that a state with more than 40% NRW, they are given a grant if they can reduce their NRW from 40% to 30%. So of course, the state or the water operator need to invest first to manage the NRW. This is where we can come in to bridge that. We can come in to do the financing on the infrastructure, on the project, to bridge for the grant. So we will look at it as we do it now, and then the non-revenue will drop accordingly in accordance to the plan. And of course, the federal government will make a payment to the state, and this particular amount will be used to offset the borrowings of the contractor. And of course, I think because of the nature of this industry, whatever that we do, we need a government guarantee is required. Because the state, I think there is, in our poll question also, there's a lot of issues about the operators, the credit worthiness of the operators. And because of this, normally we will ask for a guarantee from the government, be it state or be it a federal government. It is actually to make sure that whatever that invested in that particular project, that we will have, an opportunity to get it repaid. Okay, and lastly, what we're going to share is actually when we look at the industry itself, we understand that there is about 43.8 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe currently in Malaysia, which is already more than 20 years old, and the replacement itself will cost the government about 18.1 billion. So you just imagine the opportunity that you have. And SPAN has also estimated that 70% of the amount capital expenditure on national water resources and supply system. So about 76 billion plus another 18 billion is almost 100 billion on water industry. So this is actually to confirm what Dr. Cheng has presented earlier, that to do water resources or to manage our water resources and to have a good water supply, we need to invest a lot. And of course, because this is actually not economic, and this is actually political, more to political motivated industry, government support is actually is essential. Okay, so I think that's it. That's what we can share. And on our last slide is actually contact details of BPMB. The same is actually going to be shared dalam MWA website, right? So this is our contact details, and please call us to discuss in terms of the structuring of facility. I think we can work it together just to make it more bankable. So with that, I thank you. Back to you, Dr. Ching.
Okay, thank you, Cik Khairil, for the insightful presentation. I think before I open for the Q&A, I think we want to go on the second round of poll, right, Dr. Hayati?
Yes, thank you so much, speakers. Yes, we have the second polling question. So asking Joe to assist us with the questions.
For the poll, yeah? Okay, hold on.
Yes, we can see it now. So ladies and gentlemen attending on Zoom platform, please kindly participate in answering the polling question set 2. We have only 5 questions, and then you only need to say yes, no, or neutral. Meanwhile, we would like to thank both our esteemed speakers, Encik Abdul Hadi and also Encik Khairul Anwar, for such an inspiring insights on financing water sector, financing solutions for water sector. And I can see that we have lots and lots of questions coming in the chat room in Zoom. And perhaps after this, we can check if there are any more questions on Facebook and YouTube Live. Okay, can I have some feedback on how many has answered the poll? Joe?
Okay, hold on.
Plus 50 lah.
Sorry, Mr. Lee?
50 plus. 50. Over 50 already. 60.
Hafiz, I can hear you breaking up. Hafiz from MWA, yeah. Okay, so 50, 60 now?
Yeah, 60 now.
You know. So after the 2 presentations, everyone has a clearer overview as to how might we.
Apa Hafiz? Hafiz apa?
Sorry, but Hafiz, you are, yes, please mute yourself because the echoing is
60 plus. No.
yes, okay. Shall we then project the results, Mr. Lee?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Joe, can we see the results from the polling? Okay, so Dr. Ching, if I may just read the summary here, the summary of the poll results. Lack of appropriate analytical tools and data to assess complex water-related investments and track record of such investments can deter financiers. And this one, more than 80% agreed to this. Number two, water services are often underpriced, resulting in a poor record of cost recovery for water investments. Over 80% of you also agreed to this. Water projects are often too small and too context specific. This makes emerging innovative financing models difficult to scale up. So this is about 41% saying yes, and then 28% saying no, and 31% having neutral opinion over this. Prevalent business models sometimes fail to support operation and maintenance efficiency, a condition to sustain service at least cost over time. More than 70% agree to this. And then finally, a firm commitment and schedule to replace and repair aging infrastructure needed to push capital program budgets upwards for security of water in the future. And nobody said no to this, but over 90% said yes to this poll. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And then I hand over the session back to Dr. Ching for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Dr. Yati. I think before I pick up one of a few questions from the chat box, I have one question for Pak Ab lah. So, Cik Adi, can you jadi boleh? Cik Adi, there has been, I think, a discussion out there on the Pak Ab project management approach lah. You see now, right? For a project Pak Ab, you do almost all lah, I would say.
All right.
From preparing a tender document, you award the tender, you implement the project before you hand over to the operator. This model, what call it the current water asset management company, right? There is another option is that why don't you focus only on funding? You are a banker, right? You're doing all the tendering, awarding, all the thing. That leave it to the operators. As long as they could pay your so-called loan, it's fine. Okay. And what is your take on that, Ichadi?
Okay. First of all, thank you, Dr. Ching. It's a good question. I think the question been addressed to us in many questions in the past. First of all, we have to stick to our model. We have to stick to our model. The model is really to assist water operator to implement the capex implementation. To implement the capex. In fact, in our project capex program, we have three categories of capex. First, we call it major. Major, normally we're talking about new projects involve consultants, and most of the time it's a big projects. Second, we have a minor project. Minor project, we normally appoint water operator as our implementing agents. And thirdly, we have mini. Mini means we allow water operator to decide. I mean, it's like what you suggested earlier. Basically, we allow water operator to execute it, and once completed, they can present to PAC for refund. So that amount used to be quite small, but nowadays we allow up to 10% of the approved budgets, depending on state per state. And the reason why we have to do such a way, Doctor, earlier your question, why not? Why do I have to control all the? This is part of the mandate. The model part was formed. The model is to make sure value for money. The value for money for all the tenders. Even currently also, we don't see all the auto operator, not all auto operator has a very strong procurement or tender evaluation teams. That's why all the tender been centralized for major, centralized in part. For minor project, auto operators are doing the tender. I mean, they just come to PARC for approval. So I think if you want all the water operator to do all the tenders, then they have to build up the team. They have to build up the team, and to have good QS is not cheap. So you have to build your own team, and it will be very costly for water operators. On some state, yes, our evaluation, there are certain states, big state, they have a very good team, and some of the state they don't have that team at all. So I think the model itself, I think it requires that the control on PARC. Why? Because our covenant on each financing or pembiayaan is very, very simple, very loose. We are not like a bank loan documents. So I think it's fair for us to control on the implementation side while we are relaxing on the financing side. And of course, we are talking about how to move from leasing base to the financing base. If you want to go on financing base, then we have to get the financing license. We have to get lending license, or even on the greater scale, we probably want to be a banking license. So I think as it is, it fits both ways, because we work in a very simple manner, then we can execute the CapEx implementation faster. I mean, we mitigate all the risks by having that opportunity to determine the tender process and also other areas related to project execution. So I would say it will take time. I mean, first of all, the water operator must prove that they have very strong tender evaluation team to do that. And in fact, we are allowing them to do that under the minor project. So I'm not saying 100% we are monopolized the award. So it has a minor project as well as the mini project, and we are increasing the minor part, the mini projects. Yeah. So slowly we'll see the capability of the water operator to manage the tender, because we do not want to see some attempt to maneuver certain tender process. I think it will go with maturity, capability as well. I think we are still open on that matter.
Okay, thank you, Fadi. Yeah. I like to take this question from Mr. Christopher Rajas Selvan. I think he directed this question to Pembangunan, I think, right? Many of the contractors here are small and medium scale and need financing for these small projects. Maybe Khairil, would you want to address this question?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ching. Okay, this is actually a very good question, and normally we will get this question whenever that we go. And to Christopher Raja, it is actually for BPMB. We are a development financial institution. What we do is actually we will look at a particular project, and the size of the company is not matter to us. What important to us is actually you have that capability to deliver, and you have that capability to come out with the other portion of it. As I mentioned, I think in my slide presentation just now, our financing is only up to 80%. So the 20% must come from the promoter, which is yourself. And we have been in our past experience doing the PF5 project. The company is actually not a big company, but they are big now with steady cash flow coming from the PF5 project. And again, on the CTOS, on the record, on whatever audited account that you need to do, it is actually compulsory. It's not only BPMB, it's all the banks. For CTOS, as an entrepreneur, you need to maintain a good CTOS record. So if you have any issue in repayment, it is advisable that you come to the bank that you borrow to discuss on the best repayment method. What I want to stress is actually for an entrepreneur, CTOS, you need to take care of your CTOS, because not only I think not only the bank other companies also will look at CTOS. Some contract awarder also they are looking at the CTOS. So I mean, the answer to the question is actually come and see us. Size of the company is not matter. As far as you have that capability and you have that 20% to move the project forward, yes, we can have a look at it.
Okay. Okay, I think another question to Kadela. This is from my good friend Basri. Question is bank permohonan is flexible to a longer repayment term for either CAPEX or OPEX, which is 15 years and 5 years now, right? Are you consider a longer repayment term, Kadela, for that?
Okay, for the moment, at the moment, it's only the maximum period is actually up to 15 years repayment. But we can have a look at a case-to-case basis, and we may need to make that exception. It is actually as a guide to all the lenders in BPMB that the maximum tenure is about 15 years. But if let's say the project would have a longer repayment period, then we can request for a exception to it. But it's case-to-case basis, Dr. Ji.
Okay. Then Hadi, I got one question to you here. I think from my good friend Basri as well, right? Are water operators underutilized funding under PAAP, even though their business plan is being approved by SPAN?
Not to say very underutilized. I mean, water operator present a list of projects for SPAN to approve in their business plan. And water operator also prioritize the projects that they want to do. And they are prioritizing based on the demand and supply, demand studies in the states, and plus other activities, plus other factors. But at the same time, they are also subject to the repayment capability, because we are, although we are not very, very strict in terms of governance, but as a whole, we are also looking at the capability of the water operator to pay. So we need to say, water operator themselves also doing the study. I mean, if I want to do this project, then whether I can use that project. And also, it takes time. I mean, yes, it looks like underutilized, but we don't know. I mean, the business plan is about 3-year rolling business plan. Currently, it looks sometimes because of the data presented is just after the approval done by the SPAN. Maybe it's earlier stage of the next what you call this cycle. So as a whole, I would say most of the state use their allocation except for 1 or 2 states only.
Okay, Adi. There is a question directed to me on the role of BBA on NRW projects. Maybe I think let me just explain that. Right? We have set the target of 25% to be achieved under the 12 Malaysia plan. Right. The last year performance was 36%. From the breakdown from 36 to 25, there is 11% reduction. Right, and according to the data from SPAN, right, you need an investment close to 1 billion to reduce 1% of NRW. That means that to achieve 25% by end of 12 plan, you need close to 10 billion of investment. Around that, 800 billion to 1 billion investment. Right? You need about 10 billion of investment. That right. And to go down further to the until the 15 Malaysia plan, next 20 years, right? 10%. So we want to achieve from the end of 12 plan, 25% to 10% is another 15%. Then you can see how much that we have to invest instead. Okay, what will be the role of BBA, right? BBA will be purely focusing on water source projects that funded by grant, I would say, right? Under the migration projects, all water supply project NW will eventually goes to PAAP lah. That proper. But we do see that that there is as because we have to blend between grant and loan. We know that there are a few water operators, they can afford even to invest in capex. You know, like state, like they're having more than 40% of NW, right? This state that we need to assist in terms of giving them a direct grant. That's why way back in the 11th Malaysia Plan, we launched what you call it, the National NW program, right? We have invested close to 2 billion ringgit on that. And now we have the remaining is about 1.3 billion ringgit. That's why I do see the proposal from Kylie just now on to recoup the investment on the what amount of water saved. That would be one of the things that we would like to put forward to the contractor lah. In CASA we call it performance-based contracting, right? That water company, they could leverage on the investment from the contractor to invest in the so-called the second pendekatan under SPAN, and then they recoup investment one through the grant, and because grant we can provide maximum up to 75% if they meet the target. The remaining 25% will be worked out between water contractors and also the operators to recoup that over a number of over a period of time. That's what we want to propose to the industry on that. Right. Hadi, you want to add on that, Hadi?
Yeah, that's interesting.
On NRW, basically pipe replacement is part of our portfolio. I mean, we spend quite a big amount on pipe replacement. Even some of the state, we feel that the state should start with the pipe replacement, because we will address the issue on the have to treat more, and also on the other side of the NRW commercial loss by having them to replace all the water operators. I mean, the revenue, I mean the new meter will reflect the actual utilization of the water. So that's commercial gain, revenue gain from them. On the pipe, I mean, once you reduce the NRW, they don't have to produce as much before. So again, this is something that concurrently it must be done. So that's why for pipe replacement is core of the core part of NRW, which is pipe replacement to be handled by pipe. And slowly we are discussing about slightly different area. You know, like we discussed, maybe small works for the state which do not have the financial capability. Maybe we can assist them by providing ultra low rates lah. So this is where the blending of cheap fund and market fund make it possible for water operator to achieve this. And also the certain level of NW is a key here also, because there's a certain level of economic level of tariff that make this economical for operator to change the pipe and also to change the meter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyrie, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think we have discussed about this earlier, because there's a grant. The grant can become our repayment source. So, you know, if you want to do the infra now, might as well get the contractor to invest now. And of course, the repayment of the loan will be from 75% from the grant, and the balance 25% we can, you know, we can do it through whatever savings that the water operator can register after that. I think that one is actually a workable solution.
Yeah.
We need to explore that.
Okay, there's a question from Encik Zamri to Bank Pembangunan lah. Due to monopolistic market structure for water supply services industry in Malaysia, most water infrastructure related projects appear to be at a low risk side. In that sense, are there any preferential commercial rates be made available by Bank Pembangunan for the purpose of financing water infrastructure projects?
I think I've covered that in my presentation just now. Under the Sustainable Development Scheme, you know, there's a 2% discount given by the government, so that will bring down the borrowing costs to the operators.
Okay. So Jadis, there seems to be an agreement that we ought to relook at the concession model, right?
Correct.
As you know, previously, this modern model, I think, is failed to address the fundamental issues of water services, lah, right? But what do you think that what would be the best possible contribution that if we were to relook at this concession model within the migration framework that we have now, looking into role of SPAN, business plan, so on and so forth?
I look at the concession arrangement to complement what's actually been done by various water players. I think the improvement that needs to be done with respect to concession arrangement is more on the regulated profits. So the state will not, our water operator will not overly burden by that services. I know the state will always make a comparison between what's been offered by PUB and what's been offered by the concession. I mean, these are two different levels of borrowing capability, and I'm sure concession will offer other things that probably PUB can offer. I mean, concession with all the expertise, technical experience can always give added value to operators. And of course, if we are talking about allowing concession to access to cheaper fund, then there has to be another way of addressing. It could be under subsidy or even a special guarantee to enable them to access for cheaper funds. But I would say it will complement. It cannot be too expensive that makes PUB financing more palatable. I mean, both model has its own plus and minus, pro and cons. But all in all, I would say we have to speed up the investment. So, I mean, you need more players and not the same players. I mean, we are not in need of creating another PUB number 2. I mean, we have to be a different type of player as well. Yeah. So I think it is workable. It's more of taking a closer look at the concession arrangement itself. I think that's all. Because in the past, we have concession that has, making quite big returns on the concession.
Yeah. Khairil, you want to add on that?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ching. Okay, of course, concession is based on PFI. So the government normally through UCAS, will have to have a look at what is the proposal look like. And of course, the government will look at what is the IRR for the particular company. It's no longer like you do this and you can do whatever money that you want. So the government must limit that the profitability of the company to have to be limited. Whatever saving, it have to go back to the state or to the government and not for the company to do it. Yeah, that's my view.
Hadi,
maybe I want to add a bit, Doctor, in terms of the previous failure of concession. I mean, basically it's about honoring the concession term itself, and the terms are mainly on tariff. Tariff. I mean, if you are talking about small tariff adjustment, I think it's still implementable. Yeah, I mean, people will not go against the concession. If you are talking about some compulsory increase in tariff, or maybe we can call it something else to make sure that concession can be fulfilled, concession term can be fulfilled. And here, maybe we can consider there are certain type of tariff increase should be in the hands of the federal government, and a bit slightly small power for the state to decide on tariff adjustment to make the concession arrangement workable. Otherwise, it will be like something that we have seen in Johor or in Selangor. So it end up in a default because concession have to rely on the public or market funding, and market funding requires good rating, good security, and these are built in dalam security arrangement lah. To make it viable, then there has to be a revision. But if the source of power to approve certain tariff is wholly in the hands of one party, then it's not going to be very easy for the lender. Yeah.
Hadi, are you ready now to take on also funding the civil sector?
I think it goes with the process, Doctor. I mean, of course, the WASIA has to be updated or revised to include the area. I know some of the area in Suresh is the return is quite good also, and maybe that's something that Bank Bangunan or other than Bank Bangunan would like to jump in. Again, Doctor, like I said, we'll jump. I mean, our role to come in where everybody cannot fund. I think it's easier that way, right? Because we are government entity. So we can explore, Doctor.
Okay, I just want to go this question from Hani Huraini to Bank Bangunan, I think, and also touching about on NW. Right? Funding on NW will fall under OPEC or CAPEX. I think it's CAPEX. I think it's CAPEX. Okay. Should the result of it is unfavorable, right, or declining, the contractor will then unable to fulfill the repayment. Is there room for the contractor to wait until NW is achievable and giving additional funding in case is needed?
I think that question was directed to us, right?
Yeah.
So that is why, Doctor, when we do credit evaluation on particular project in Bank Bangunan, we do have our technical team in support of our whatever proposal that we put forward for approval. So of course we are going to scrutinize whatever data that you provide to us. It have to be a real data, and of course and then from there we do some some adjustment just to make sure that whatever that you are proposing is actually can achieve whatever that you say that you can achieve. Because we have experience in Selangor, and I think in a few more states, when they do their NRW management, they really be able to bring down the NRW to whatever that they can. So if let's say that things happen badly to it, and new investment need to be done, that one can be discussed,
Okay.
Because we don't want that project to be a failed project and just leave it that way. Of course, we want it to be a success project, and the bank itself can exit from it.
Okay, I got one question to you. You see, right? I showed in my slide. I would say 100% of projects for flood mitigations under GPS, even for climate change, are funded by federal grant, right? From the bank perspective, what is your investment appetite on these such projects?
Okay, GPS project, right? This is actually normally GPS project, So is the grant still there, Doctor? If it's the grant still there, and if you want to do it big way, you want to do it as far as you can, right? So of course we can do the financing first, and we'll get the grant later. Or if you want the project to be success, and it have to be, I mean, we will tell the contractor that you need to complete, and upon completion and satisfaction of GPS, then only you'll be able to get the grant, right? So
is my point. You see now, right? I think the portion of the grant now have been on the reducing term, right? Last for 50 million, you got on half of that, right? To compensate or to bridge the gaps. I'm not sure whether from the bank perspective, have you done any so-called assessment on the so-called the appetite for contractor to come in and fund that such projects under GPS? Unlike in water sector, we know that is quite okay, favorable there, right? That kind of things. Knowing that the
is very we have not, but of course when we give out money, we must be able to take it back, right? To collect it back, because we are also managing a private, a public fund. So we need to see on what is the repayment capability, or what is the repayment methods going to be for teaching.
Yeah.
Macam water, we understand that if you fund this, then there is going to be a payment from the water operator, right? So in case of GPS, so who's going to make that payment? Apart from, of course, public fund from the government. If there is
maybe your SDFS scheme could be because that very much like you want to address the SDG goals, right? Meeting SDG goal, come under that, right? Hadi?
Yeah, but of course, when you are in the business of lending out money, you must be able to collect it back. So
Yeah.
so it's not that you know, if it's one way, then we call it a grant lah.
Okay, Hadi, I got one question for you, Hadi. How
Okay.
will PAAP coexist and compete with other private financial institutions with this alternative water financing journey?
Water financing, alternative financing, basically is a carefully drafted idea lah, to ensure that kita complement lah, rather than compete, because I'm sure we have a different advantage and disadvantage juga.
Yeah.
And then even kalau if we have alternative financing, right, the risk associated with the industry, the water sector, will not change. It's just we are importing or inviting additional player to come and participate at the improved scenario, improved terms lah. We are calling this private sector. Yes, you can look at this. Contohnya water reclamation plant. It used to be funded by grant, by JPP. Now we see this is a viable project for private sector to come in. This is where PAAP will not come in. PAAP will say, okay, this is suitable for private sector. Let private sector do it. You know, I think there are certain areas where we have advantages and suitability. Contohnya, who would want to fund the pipe replacement? I mean, how much saving can you get from NWA? I mean, from NWA or benefits. I mean, of course, it will reduce the NWA, but it will reduce the production cost, for example, if pipe replacement. So here, in pipe replacement sector, I don't think I have any competition. Nobody wants to come and invest in pipe replacement because of source repayment is quite hard, you know. So I think alternative financing is creating an environment to get more private sector participation. I mean, of course, we've talked to Bank Pembangunan. Even Bank Pembangunan is going to be a very close competition. Still, we feel that there are certain areas which maybe Bank Pembangunan will not come in. You know, so we have to work on to reduce the overlapping on the I mean, it should be a strategy, right, Doctor? By CASA, by EPU, it's a strategy to move this industry. So it's not a very open field for everybody to, you know, compete. So I think the competition will be reduced. I mean, with the careful planning.
Yeah. Just to add, I think we ought to be aware that water sector is a regulated industry now, right? Right. Even your profit before tax, profit after tax is being generated by SPAN is there. Okay, I think if time permit, I take one question here from Nor Hafizah to PAAP, right? He's asking whether Hadi PAAP also keen to invest in technology beside focus more on the infra side of it.
Yeah, yes, of course. In fact, we have our initiative called WAVE, we call it WAVE, Water Asset Enhancement, Water Asset Value Enhancement. We are going around to see the scout for good technology, suitable technology to be referred to water operators or even to consultants, you know, to update their knowledge in the industry and see the experience in other countries. You know, not everything has to be very canggih, and some country even use a simpler method. So, but still technology, right? But then, yes, to answer to that question, yes, we are open. We are targeting industry yang technology is going to be, you know, Camillus, Mesra Alam, all this sustainable development goals lah. You know, energy saving, for example, but more on earth friendly, less chemical. And cheaper, you know, because we in water we have to deal with pollution, we have to deal with certain minerals in the raw water or treated water. So this must be tackled efficiently, effectively, and also the economic wise as well. We don't want to have a technology can address that, but it's very expensive for water operator. yes, that's in line with our objective.
So carry on your IDTS scheme, maybe you want to just highlight a few key the scoping of that scheme a bit. What kind of?
Okay, I think I've mentioned that the scheme introduced by the government to help industry players in automation process, as well as to digitalize whatever that we have done manually currently lah. So if let's say there is a need in the water industry for to capture whatever data, so you need to do an investment on that. Yeah, we are ready to look at it, and of course we need to know what is the take-up source lah.
But this, I think, it could also include putting up the MZ zone, GIS, kind of mapping, that kind of thing, right? Which
Yes,
also help to reduce the
correct
water loss. Okay, I think I have covered all the question posted on the chat group, right? I think so. So with that, I would like to thank both of the panelists, Cik Khairil Anwar and Cik Hadi, for the insightful deliberation and discussion, and we hope that all the participants we together benefit from the discussion. And we have only one goal, I would say. We want to see a better future of the water sector in the country, going toward the water sector top in 2040. And one day, even for me, right, I would like to see that you have 24/7 water supply that flow to your house. That one day you could ever drink the water right from the tap, even at the roadside kind of thing, and also at that quality, right? With that, again, thank you very much, MWA and panelists. And with that, I hand over back the session to the MC. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ching, as the moderator for the webinar today, and our heartiest thanks to Encik Abdul Hadi and also Encik Khairil Anwar, our esteemed speakers for the webinar today on financing solutions for water infrastructure projects in Malaysia. And I'm sure that we have had a very good discussion, and that all the questions in the chat box have been addressed. And then we would like to thank all of our participants here on Zoom platform, as well as those viewing on Facebook, as well as YouTube Live of the Malaysian Water Association. So ladies and gentlemen, before we end the program, may I invite everyone on Zoom to please kindly switch on your video so that we can at this moment. We have over 90 participants and reaching 105 participants at some point. And I'm very happy to see familiar faces on Zoom platform. To mention you, we have council members of MWA and representatives from water stakeholders. Thank you so much. I have 4 pages here, so please keep smiling until the last page of Zoom. I'm going to start with page 1 after 3 for the screenshot. Okay, so page 1, 1, 2, 3, and then page 2. 1, 2, 3. Page 3. 1, 2, 3. And then page 4, the last page. Thank you so much. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And if I may, I would like to share with you just a little bit on programs IWA is organizing in the coming months. So let me just, okay. If you can see the slide here, I'm sharing the MWA design guidelines for water supply systems, as well as the MWA planning guidelines and best practices handbook for water supply systems. Please contact Ms. Ruby or any of our MWA secretariats for purchase. And then we also have the Malaysian Water Industry Status and Outlook report for 2020 and 2021. I think everybody should have this little handbook. And then as a member, you get a price as compared to non-member price. So we welcome all of you who are attending the session today to register and become member of MWA. Therefore, you get the benefits of joining our programs and purchasing our products at a much cheaper price. The next upcoming program would be the Malaysia International Water Convention 2021. And this is a virtual event, and with the first announcement, we would like to encourage everybody to kindly participate. You may keep in touch with our secretariat as to how might you submit your abstract according to the thematic topics that we have prepared for you. And the virtual event is taking place on 20th until 24th of September this year. And I think last but not least, we have a little something for you. Water is Life Run, and this is a virtual run, and I'm very happy to share this first cut of our promotion. And we look forward to having you to running with us for 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, just, you know, to keep us fit and healthy while staying at home with MWA. And then I think that's all from me as your MC for today. And I hope that everyone has had a meaningful session and thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. And we look forward to be seeing you in our next MWA webinar and program. With that, have a nice remaining of the evening. Have an enjoyable time, relaxing or running, whatever you do for your afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ani.
Welcome. Bye.
MWA. Thank you all.